All right, welcome into this new edition of the Hoist the Colors podcast. It is Wednesday, August 9th. Preseason camp for football is going on. I just hit publish on a new article, so check that out. I get it. Some people are going to be tuning in. They're like, why the hell are we talking ECU basketball with football on the horizon? Well, Casey Ramaley and I have been going through these previews for the American Athletic Conference for the upcoming season and also for the roster and what to expect this winter for the Pirates. And we got to finish what we started, Case. And I know that football was on the mind, but I still feel like there's a lot of hype surrounding this basketball team. And, a lot of people have enjoyed these previews. So we got a few more guys to do today. We're going to focus a lot on Jaden Walker, what he means to the team. We're also going to take a look at Valentino Pinedo. We're going to take a look at Cam Hayes. If he's eligible, what will he bring to the table? Is he going to be eligible? We'll get into that discussion, and we'll also continue our AAC previews with UAB and South Florida. So, Kaysen, you were at practice for football last week, and you're going to be at the scrimmage this Saturday for us covering that. So, I know you're probably getting some football fever, but we're still talking hoops here. So, what are your thoughts on continuing your excitement for basketball, even though football is around the corner?
Yeah, we're in the dog days of training camp. I love college football. I love football. I love NFL. I love all football. But now the fact that we're in the dog days of training camp means we are getting closer to basketball season. And slowly on Twitter, you start to see teams posting their non-conference schedules. I've seen about 8 or 10 in the past 2 days. So I think we're counting down the days until ours is published.
Yeah, so the ECU women's non-conference schedule is out, and I guess we're still waiting on maybe one or two contracts to be signed for the men. We kind of know most of the games at this point. We're waiting on the dates. I think there's one game that hasn't been announced yet, so we're still waiting on that. When we do get that announcement, Kason, we plan at least to have a podcast kind of looking at the non-conference schedule. And then once the AAC dates are announced, probably in September, we'll break that down as well. And I think, we'll kind of have a better understanding of what Charlotte brings to the table at that point too. We've done every team in the American effort today except Charlotte. And, I don't know if you've done any research on them or not. We can talk about that. But basically with the late head coaching change, some moving parts there, we can reevaluate Charlotte at that point. But for this series, for the player previews, for the opponent previews, today will be the final show for that. And then we will have more basketball content in the coming weeks and months as well, leading into tip-off in November. Programming note, the Hoist the Colors radio show, 94.3 The Game, returns Monday. So next week, we'll be back daily from 12 noon to 1. On Tuesday, we're scheduled to have assistant coach Riley Davis from the basketball team join us. So we'll talk ECU Hoops Tuesday as well, and we'll have plenty to talk about then. But, Casey, let's get into that conversation of this roster, and we'll continue with Jaden Walker, who I honestly think is one of the more valuable pieces on this entire team from the standpoint of, all right, maybe you get in foul trouble with your point guard. Maybe you have an injury with your point guard. Bobby Pettiford right now is actually injured. He will be back for the start of the season, but you do have the luxury of being able to slide in Jaden Walker at the point. He can play the 2. He can play the 3. He can play the 4. We saw last year how valuable he was. And, I don't know exactly what Jaden Walker's role is going to be this year, but I do know that he is a vital piece of this roster, regardless of how it plays out.
Yeah, I think every team in college basketball needs a Jaden Walker type player. And just watching him last year, it just showed that he's the definition of a team player. When the team needed him at whichever spot he was needed, he stepped up to the plate and performed and almost outperformed at some points. And I think a major key with him is when he was playing point guard, he was distributing the ball great. He could score when he wanted to. Yes, I would like to see him be more aggressive, but also another thing about him when he wasn't playing point guard, when Javon was playing, or when RJ was handling the ball, Jaden moves without the ball great. And that is huge for college basketball because of how ball dominant some players are. The ability for the other players on the floor to move without the ball, move freely, be in the right spot. And Jaden is perfect for that. And for this team, with Bobby's injury this summer, I bet you Jaden has stepped up and played great in practice and improved and helped this team play with that point guard role that Bobby's going to be.
Yeah, and we know that Caleb accounts on the roster. He can run the point as well. Obviously, a more traditional point guard. He's only 5'7" or so, but if he's going to play, he's going to play point guard. So Jaden and I assume Caleb probably played that role. Cam Hayes may have gotten some time there. We'll get into that discussion here a little bit. But Jaden Walker, the last 10 games of last season, 6'5", 200 pounds. So he's a big point guard. But he started the last 10 games. He recorded three double-doubles. He played 40 minutes in 3 of those contests. He scored a career-high 24 points at Tulsa in a 40-minute showing. He dished out 10 assists along with 18 points at SMU. That was a loss, but he played well that day, and that was kind of the point you really circled. Hey, this team is pretty – I don't want to say special, but definitely, they tried the Caleb account thing earlier after Javon Small's injury, and there was just too much inconsistency. But once they went to Jaden Walker, I'm trying to look at it here. Yeah, really like early January, but definitely he started to play that point role early February. That SMU game was the first time he started. He played 39 minutes. And it just felt like the team, especially they came home, obviously after the tough situation with Jeff Charles, won the Cincinnati game with him at the point, won the SMU game at home, lost at SMU, but then beat Tulsa. So you had a winning streak of 3 or 4 there. You had a pretty good performance against Houston. It just felt like with Walker at the point, this team was so much better than what it was, right after Javon Small's injury.
Yes, because the team played relaxed and they played more flexible. And that just goes to show what Jaden Walker did because he's told this team, I'm going to take over as point guard. And that's what he did. And I remember me and you talking after the Tulane game. He almost had a triple double. He had 18 points, 11 assists, and he had 5 or 6 rebounds. And I was like, whew, Steve, he was a couple rebounds from a triple double. And it just goes to show his versatility for this team. And just like I remember you asked Schwartz in the spring around baseball season, you asked him spring, early summer, you asked him what is Jaden's role going to be coming into this year, and he said, "Well, we're going to look at that. We're going to see how he looks at wing, or if we need him playing point guard again, he might play point guard again." So I'm very curious to see what he plays this year with Bobby coming. And I also think that on the topic is if Cam does get eligible, I don't think we're going to see Jaden at point guard this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing for me is so we know he can play the point, and I would make the argument at this point he's more effective as a player at point guard than he is on the wing because you look at his shooting numbers, he's not really a shooter. And if he's playing off the ball, he's probably going to be more of a defensive specialist. He's not going to be a guy who is I don't know. I mean, I guess you can have multiple point guards, but usually you want one guy who's really running things at the top of the key, running off the pick and roll. But his scoring numbers off the ball were I would say, inconsistent. And then his scoring took off when he became a point guard. So I think ideally you want Pettiford running the point. So, what do you do with Jaden Walker if he's not running the point in that lineup? Is he just a straight up backup point guard? Can he score more on the wing than he showed last year now that he maybe has some confidence driving the ball, shooting the ball? I mean, he didn't shoot a bad percentage. 32.4% isn't terrible from three-point range. It's just it was kind of hit or miss. Free throw shooting was an issue, just 58.3%. That's got to improve for a guard. Again, rebounding was solid, 4.6 rebounds, 7.6 points per game was his final numbers. He also had 101 assists to 73 turnovers. So, if he's not playing on the ball, my question to you, Casey, is what is his best role? Is he a starting caliber wing or is he more of a bench piece?
Personally, I think that this may be a bold prediction, but I think if you really look into it, it could happen. I could see him being 6th man of the year in the ACC. I think that because as we talked during this whole series, that starting 3 spot is the biggest question mark on this team. You don't know necessarily what you're going to get from Quentin. You don't know what Faison is right now. You'll know by October. You'll know by in November what he is, I think. But I think that you start Quentin or Faison at 3, and then you have Jaden coming off the bench at around maybe the under 16 or under 12 timeout, and he's a player that can come in and not miss a beat and provide that spark. And he could come in if Bobby needs a breather, or if Arlington needs a breather, or Faison needs a breather, and there won't be any drop off. And I think I he is a starter, but I think for this team, his veteran presence coming off the bench, I think is his best role in my opinion.
Yeah, I think if Pettiford's healthy, I think it makes sense to bring him off the bench because he can then take over that point guard. I mean, to me, assuming Hayes is not eligible, I see Jaden as your best backup point guard. And you can make an argument he is proven more as a starting point guard in NCAA basketball at this point than Bobby Pettiford. Now, I think they're very different players. Bobby is extremely quick with the ball. Jaden is more deliberate, brings you more versatility. But I thought he started to really pick up kind of what they were trying to do offensively in terms of distribution late in the year. So we'll see. It's a good problem to have. When you have too many guys for your starting five. I mean, there have been so many years, Casey, where it's like, man, like who the hell is going to be in the starting five because you don't have enough guys at East Carolina. But now that you have a guy like Jaden Walker who's can fill 1 through 3 realistically, has played the 4 in the past. I just think it's so crucial for this team, and allows you to overcome an injury or two, or a guy missing a game or two here or there. So I think Jaden Walker is vital to this team. All right, so we always predict kind of what the stat line is for the player previews we're doing, and I think Jaden Walker's possible stat line has as wide a range as anybody on this team outside of maybe some of the freshmen we just don't know much about. Because, hey, is he going to get a ton of minutes at point guard, or is he going to be more of a defensive off the ball wing? I don't know. So a lot of that depends on what Pettiford does. A lot of that could depend on what Cam Hayes' eligibility is like. But let's try and predict. Again, last year he was 7.6 points per game. That number shot up substantially towards the end of the year when he started to play point guard. He had 101 assists in 30 games or so. So he had about 3 assists per game, and he also had 4.6 rebounds per game. So I'll let you go first, Case. And what do you try and project for Jaden Walker?
This is a tough one because you don't really know what he is going to play, but I'm going to say his stat line in my role, like I said, coming off the bench as the sixth man. I'm going to put him at around 5 points a game, 2.5 assists, and 4 rebounds. But I will say this: most of Jaden Walker's plays this year are not going to show up on the box score.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, that was about in line with what I'm thinking. 5-6 points a game, 3 assists per game, maybe a touch below. And also, 3 to 4 rebounds per game. So, I mean, I think maybe his numbers take a small step back from last year, but I think he'll be just as valuable, if not more valuable, like you said, making a ton of those impact plays elsewhere. So, Jaden Walker, either way you slice it, I think he's a vital piece of this team. All right, another guy is our last for sure active scholarship player for this season, Valentino Pinedo, out of Madrid, Spain. Second year in the program, listed at 6'8", 228. He's put on some muscle this offseason. He has really worked hard on his shooting, from what I've been told. Last season appeared in 21 games for East Carolina, really as a, kind of a interject, hey, go play 3 to 5 minutes per game, mix it up in there, maybe get some fouls. He didn't really shoot the ball a whole lot, only shot 9 attempts from the field. He did make 5, played 96 minutes in 21 games total. He did go 10 of 13 from the line, had 9 total rebounds. He committed 17 fouls, 2 assists, 6 turnovers, 1 block, 1 steal. He averaged 1 point per game, scored 20 total points. So Valentino Pinedo, kind of a more traditional forward type player last year, really didn't show much of a shooting touch, at least at ECU. We didn't really see him attempt it. And so I'm curious, and I've heard his work ethic is great. I've heard he's done well in practice. but he's kind of stuck behind Ezra Asar and Brandon Johnson right now, Kaysen, at least on paper. So what do you make of Valentino Pinedo's projection as a sophomore? Like, what is fair to expect from Valentino?
I'm curious to see what it is, honestly, because last year, I mean, I don't think he played great last year. He didn't play great last year. And I think that with another summer under his belt is going to help him immensely. But also, you are playing behind Ezra and Brandon, which is going to be very, very hard to get minutes. But I could see him getting similar minutes again this year, like a similar role, just like you said, kind of inject him for 3 to 5 minutes if Ezra or Brandon get in foul trouble real quick or just need a breather. But as we both have talked about that, I don't think he has the size and the presence to play down low, to be banging down low. So I do think that if he does develop a nice jump shot or can shoot from the elbow or a three top of the key, little pick and pop, Jaden or Bobby, it'll be huge for his game, and then he'll get more minutes, honestly.
Yeah, it just felt like last year when he got in, his head was spinning, like he was just running around, setting picks, and he only played 96 minutes, and so like I'm not going to sit here and make a giant conclusion because I know that in practice he showed more in games, and I've heard he has shot the ball well from the perimeter, from the outside, kind of added a jumper. He showed that from his international film. We didn't really see him shoot, but shooting 77% from the line shows he's got a pretty good shooting touch. Again, not a ton of rebounding in his brief time. So, he's going to have to work on that, but just didn't really see a whole lot. So it's hard to make a prediction. Really similar to some of the freshman bigs. Like, we know Ezra's going to play. We know Brandon Johnson is going to play. But then outside of that, what other big is going to emerge? And, I guess we count Val as a big, even though he's kind of really more of a four, an undersized four, really, you could argue. But, is he going to get minutes over like a Sierra Malonga? Do they ever want to go Val, Brandon Johnson, and Ezra on the floor at the same time? Or if Val's on the floor, does that mean Ezra's coming out or Brandon Johnson's coming out? Those are questions we don't know. I mean, those are questions the coaching staff's got to decide. I would assume you're probably taking Ezra or Brandon out, and maybe it's just a foul trouble situation when Val gets in. But I do think the one thing, if he can add some legitimate shooting, I think that makes him a lot more valuable. And I do know he can pass the ball well too. So I think there's a role for him. It's just I really don't know what it is. And really with Callum Richard and Sierra Malonga, Kaysen, at this point, like these three guys, I feel like there's a good chance one of them emerges as kind of a, maybe more than we've given them credit for. But right now, we just don't know.
Yeah, they're all three question marks. And I think that as of right now for this program, it's okay for them to be question marks because you have Ezra and Brandon, which I think is also huge. And also on the flip side, those three are banging and clanging with Ezra and BJ every day, and they're just going to get better doing that. So I think right now, just like I stated a couple seconds ago, it's okay for them to be question marks right now. But I definitely think that their development this year will be huge for the team next year this time.
Yeah, we always talk about Coach Schwartz's ability to develop players, and I think Valentino would fall into that category of a guy who, when they took him, when they signed him, some people were like, well, we should have just added a transfer. They said this offseason maybe we should have just added a transfer and moved on. Well, the coaches get paid the money to develop these players. They want to develop them. They want to develop a guy like Val. So I'm curious to see where he's going to go this year. And I think, realistically, if I had to project it, which we are projecting their numbers, I would say, similar to last year, 1 to 2 points per game, 1 rebound per game, maybe an assist per game. Casey, I don't know if you feel any different at this point.
I feel the same as you. Just curious to see what his minutes are first, then maybe we can decide.
Yeah. Well, we'll see with Val as the preseason goes along. But another scholarship player. And here's the thing with 12 guys we know are going to be eligible. No college basketball team really has a rotation of 12 guys. So not everybody is going to play. But I do expect one of these maybe, whether it's Baela, whether it's Val, whether it's one of the freshmen big, whether it's Corey Faison, one of these guys is going to emerge and kind of do more than we think. and that'll be worth monitoring this preseason. All right, let's move on to Cam Hayes, who, the report came out yesterday that a North Carolina receiver transfer was denied as a second time undergrad transfer, immediate eligibility. He actually was committed to East Carolina out of high school, and he ended up going to North Carolina Central. They canceled their 2020 season. He then transferred to Kent State.
Yeah, it was Kent
And
State.
yeah, so Devontae Walker is who we're talking about at West Charlotte High School. Went to Kent State, played there. Now he's transferring again as an undergrad to North Carolina. They expected him to be eligible as a two-time undergrad transfer. The NCAA has said they're cracking down on this, and they have ruled, initially at least, he is ineligible. I believe Florida State also had a defensive lineman who was ruled ineligible as a second-time undergrad transfer. Both of these situations are being appealed. I don't know what good that'll really do, but I don't think this is a good sign for Cam Hayes, who is a two-time undergrad transfer. He is coming back to his home state, much like the kid from Florida State, much like Devontae Walker. So unless there's a special circumstance here I'm unaware of, I just don't see a scenario right now where Cam Hayes is eligible this season. I hope I'm wrong, because I think he is a very valuable piece to ECU. But your thoughts early on? I think ECU is in the process or has already submitted a waiver. We probably won't know for sure till September at the earliest. But at this point, I'm not expecting, reading the tea leaves, him to be eligible.
Yeah, the writing was on the wall when he as soon as he entered the portal. When I heard he entered the portal, there is not a good chance of him playing this upcoming year. And it sucks. If Cam was on this team, we'd be having some different conversations, because Cam is a phenomenal player. He was a great player at NC State. He was a great player at LSU. And I think that, man, if he was on this team, we'd have some fun.
The good news is he does have a redshirt year available, so he can redshirt this year and still have 2 years of eligibility remaining, which he does have. The bad news is you're losing a guy who has basically averaged 8 points per game at NC State and LSU throughout his career. Significant experience, good defender on the perimeter, can shoot it. He's going well, can do a little bit of everything. So, you've watched more Cam Hayes than I have. You grew up watching some NC State hoops. So give us the scouting report on Cam Hayes. If he is eligible this year, what does he bring to the table? If he's not, what will he bring to the table in the future?
Cam Hayes is a really, really good combo guard. He's a Power 5 starter combo guard. I've watched him since he was at Greensboro Day, and since he was at NC State. And his freshman year at NC State, he made some big time plays and big time moments. And then his sophomore year at NC State 2 years ago, they really, really went through a tough patch. And that also wasn't a very good team. The emergence of Darion Sebron really hurt Cam Hayes, and then also Terquavion Smith coming in. And by around 13 games into non-conference, Cam Hayes was benched from the starting point guard role that he did so well in last year. And that really hurt his confidence at NC State, and didn't really sit well with a lot of people at NC State. So he decided to transfer. And then he went to LSU last year. And LSU, you could argue, was one of the worst teams in Power 5 last year. Cam Hayes did put up some solid numbers, but they were just not a very good team. And I don't know why that was, because they had some good talent on the team. I guess it was just because just not good personalities meshing. But Cam can score the ball at a high level. He's a good point guard, but I think he's more comfortable at shooting guard. He is an above average defender, and he has a very good basketball IQ. And just like I said, he's made big time plays and big time moments. He's been in big games his college career.
Yeah, I'm looking at his freshman year, man. He was near the top of the league in assist to turnover ratio. And so we know he can run the point. You feel like he's better off the ball, on the ball? Where do you think he's at his best?
I think he's better off the ball. Me personally, seeing him the past 3 years, you can make it's kind of contradicting, because you look at his freshman year when he was the primary point guard, he had better numbers. But then when you look at his sophomore year, when he was playing with Darion and Terquavion Smith, two ball dominant guards, where Cam didn't have the ball in his hands, she's playing off the ball. But also, if you look at that team, Darion Sebron is in the NBA, Terquavion Smith is in the NBA, two NBA players. And then this past year at LSU, when the games he was not playing point guard, he played very well. And I think it was Justice Hill or something like that playing point guard. When he was playing point guard, Cam at shooting guard, he was very solid. And because I can calmly say Cam's the best 3-point shooter on this ECU team right now.
Well, the Pirates need some 3-point shooting, so that's the shame if he's ineligible.
Yeah.
And if he is eligible, I expect it. If he somehow gets eligible, I would expect the starting lineup to be Pettiford, Felton, Hayes. Even if that's smaller, Hayes is only 6'1", 195, but I feel like that's your best talent as far as talented lineup. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not expecting him to be eligible. If he is ruled eligible, we'll have a separate podcast just talking about how big that is, because I think you get Cam Hayes eligible and this team starts to look really, really good on paper. I still think they can be good regardless, but you get another proven scorer. I think things look really, really good. So we'll see. If he ends up having to sit out the year, maybe it's a blessing in disguise, allows him to redshirt, push, guys like Pettiford, LeCount, Walker every day in practice. So we'll see. All right, let's do our let's transition now, as we've looked now at the bulk of the roster, all the scholarship guys. Let's transition to our AAC previews. Today we're looking at USF. We are looking at UAB. And this will round out our AAC opponent previews. Finally, Brian Gregory is out at South Florida. Casey and I have been waiting for a long time now, even before we met each other. We were waiting for Brian Gregory to be fired. His last game came against East Carolina in the conference tournament. Pirates took it to them. He was fired a day later, and they since hired the Kennesaw State head coach. Kaysen always does a tremendous job with these previews. So, Kaysen, I'll let you start it off. What do you expect from this South Florida team entering a new year in the American?
As sadly as it is, even though happily they're without Brian Gregory, they will, in my prediction, finish near the bottom of the league. They did hire Kennesaw State head coach Amir Abdur-Rahim. I mean, if you look at his tenure at Kennesaw State, it is not good at all. In 2019 to 2020, he was 1-28, did not win a conference game. The following year, he was 5-19. The following year, he was 13-18. And then last year, the spike to 26-9 in the NCAA tournament appearance. And who did they play in the first round? Because I'm pretty sure they played them tough. Was it Miami or something? I can't think of the top of my head. I looked at it an hour ago.
They were a popular upset pick.
Yes. I remember that. Yeah, I remember that very clear because I remember they were a popular upset.
Xavier,
yes. Did they play them tough?
72-67. Yep, tough game.
Yeah. So, coming into this league with him as the head coach, I'm not too excited about it. I definitely think, like I said, there were bigger fish in the pond. I mean, I understand what can you do for me right now type success, but I mean, his overall record at Kennesaw State was 45-74, and you're coming in to an American Conference, which I don't think is great. And at Kennesaw State, they were good last year, but I mean, I don't really have much else to say about him because I was so bamboozled when they hired him.
So,
holy cow.
The one thing I will say is he at least did improve each year. Like, I mean,
it's not hard to improve from 1-28.
I mean, 1-28. There's not too many coaches in the world that can survive a 1-28 season. But I mean, doesn't that at least somewhat speak to the ability to build a program? 1-28, 5-19, 13-18, 26-9. I feel like at least he did show that if you give him time, he can build a winning product. But my thing is, with the transfer portal stuff now, nobody has any patience. Is he going to get the patience required to build at USF? Because I know that they brought in some transfers from Kennesaw. I'm sure they'll be pretty good, but let's be real. Jumping from the A-Sun to the American is quite a leap, and you can't just rely on a bunch of solid Kennesaw players to carry you at South Florida. So I don't know. I just feel like is he going to be able to replicate what he did at Kennesaw at USF? Is my biggest question.
And also, just like you said, that no one has patience no more. The upper people don't have patience, and rightfully so. They don't need to have patience because of what you can do in the portal now. Personally, I think if you're a first year head coach, you should be winning in 2 years because you can go out and buy a brand new team in April. It's just how it is in college basketball now.
One
And
in 28.
yeah, ridiculous. So with Gregory gone and the team changing over, well, there's turnover every year, but when a new coach leaves, they did lose 31-year-old Tyler Harris, Stephen Igo's favorite player in the world.
Dude, so glad he's finally gone. He just lit up East Carolina again and again. I'm so tired of that guy. He'll probably still find another year of eligibility.
Yeah, and then Russell Tachua, I don't know how has another year eligibility either. He's at Georgia now, which I think would be good for him. I always liked him. I always liked him as a player, seeing his improvement. And then the rest of their team transferred out and graduated. They did return Selton Miguel, 10 points a game, Sam Hines, 7 points a game, and Corey Walker Jr. But then coming in, the major bulk of the production of this team, Raheem did bring three of his best players from Kennesaw State, including NCAA tournament phenom Chris Youngblood, who averaged 15 points a game. And I mean, they got a couple of JUCO guys that scored at a high level. But also, then again, you're just unsure what the translation will be from league to league because leagues are very different. Just like you said, A-Sun American is different. But then again, this time of the year, there's always open for optimism. So we'll see.
Yeah, basically adding 3 double-digit scores from Kennesaw, adding a guy from North Florida who scored 14 a game. Is that the same league, North Florida and Kennesaw? Maybe so. I don't know. But either way, so usually if you can score the ball, it translates for the most part, but it's still a big leap. The JUCO guys, this roster is at least interesting to me. Like I wouldn't write them off as a definite last place team, but they're going to be picked near the bottom, just given the newcomers, and they lost a lot of guys in the portal. Tachua was a big one. Jameer Chaplin was always a solid player. So I don't know. Jake Boggs still in the portal, it looks like. So didn't he start at UNCW?
Do what?
Jake Boggs, was he a UNCW guy?
Yeah, he started there. He was there. He's a Carmel Christian kid from there, and then he went to Wilmington. Didn't pan out there. Then I don't know where he is now. He's in the portal though, but I don't know where he is now.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. This team, I feel like, I feel like is just going to be picked towards the bottom. I think they're similar to Charlotte, similar to UTSA, a couple of these other teams we previewed. Just a lot of question marks, but the head coach is interesting, man. It's like he had one good year. Is it a flash in the pan, or is it really something there? South Florida, they were rumored to hire somebody pretty big, weren't they? And then that fell apart.
It was going to be Mike Bray. The rumor.
That's right.
Bray.
So then that fell apart, and then they ended up going for this guy. Because the report was they were going to get Mike Bray. All right, so we'll see what happens. Interesting team. By the way, Chance Scott says he sat beside you at the UVA regional. Hell of a guy. Casey Normale. I can't confirm. Hell of a dude.
Appreciate it, Chance.
Freshly shaven Kaysen, by the way.
Yeah, I got just like I told Steven. Steven, we're walking in practice. He turns around. I was like, I didn't even notice that was you. And I was like, yeah, I got traded to the Yankees at the deadline, so I had to cut everything off, man.
Looking fresh, man. Looking fresh. Getting ready for that new school year. The ladies are going to be all over you, man.
Let's hope not.
All right, let's move on to our next one. UAB, and ECU fans know the Blazers well. They shared a conference with them with Conference USA. UAB, if there's one thing they're always good at, it's basketball. Really proud program. They really support the program. Really nice arena, Bartow Arena in Birmingham. One of the low-key strong ads of this offseason for the American was UAB basketball. How are they looking under head coach Andy Kennedy after another really good year last season?
I think they're going to be good. I mean, if you look at what he's done with that team, just like you said, they have good tradition, and Andy Kennedy is a really good head coach. I'm honestly surprised he's still there. I think a reason he's still there is because, just like you said, they have good basketball tradition. He was the longtime head coach at Ole Miss before this. I think he was there for 10 or 11 years, a while. And at Ole Miss, he was 245 and 156, which is pretty good. And then last year they were 29 and 10, and the year before that 27 and 8. And I think that anytime you get above 25 wins in college basketball, regardless of conference, that's a great accomplishment. And but I will say this, they did lose Jordan Walker, who I felt like Jordan Walker was there for holy cow years. I feel like he was there forever. And he was honestly a 30-point a night scorer for them. And they're without him, which going to curious to see how they work without him. But I definitely think Kennedy can do it without him.
Yeah, I was looking at Jordan Walker. He got the extra year of eligibility due to COVID. Averaged, like you said, 22.3 points per game. And you look at this team, they lost Jordan Walker, 22.3 points per game. Then they lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other guys to graduation who averaged 10, 9, 7, 6, 5. And that's the result. 10, 9, 7, 6, 5 points per game, 22 points per game. That is, let's see if I can do quick math here. 32, 41, 48, 50. They lost basically 50 points per game at graduation. Not to the portal, but to graduation. So they do return Eric Gaines, who averaged 11.5 last year, but he's the only returner. I'm laughing at one of the notes you wrote here about one of the guys coming in. But he's the only returner who averaged double figures. They do have some big transfers coming in on paper, but this is I don't know, like this is the team that had a huge year, but they're losing a ton. I'm sure they've got the culture set. I'm sure some of these guys who are coming back, like Javian Davis, Ephraim Johnson, Tony, great name, are going to take a step forward. But, that's a lot of production to replace.
Yeah, and just like you said, just looking at the loss, I mean, this is basically a G League team last year because of how old they were, and that's also why they were so good, and that's why they were good the past 3 years because they were all together those years basically. And I think this will be a big stepping point for this program, new conference, basically a new team, newer teams than they've had in the last couple of years. But I mean, then again, they did return Eric Gaines and Davis, who are good players. And coming in, they have Barry Dunning from Arkansas, played 16 games. James White, Ole Miss, 4 points a game, and then Will Shaver, who played 2 games, and like I felt like he was at Carolina for 4 years, only played 2 games. And then there's some controversy with him because he's from Birmingham, and then when he left Carolina, he like had like a bad ex. He like said some things about the program, and like many people, and it's a sticky situation. But if you want to look it up, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I'm curious where the production is going to come from, but then again, Kennedy's a great head coach, so he should be able to turn it around.
Is it Shaver? Do we know?
One or the other.
Let's see.
He said something about UNC when like leaving or something. I forgot about it.
Will Shaver. I just listened to the pronunciation on the UNC website. 6'10", 260. So he's a hoss, but he just never really played
because
he was
always hurt. Always hurt.
So we'll see. I'm sure he was a big recruit out of high school if he ended up at UNC.
He was, yes.
So, you got some talent here, some unproven talent, it looks like. And like you said, Andy Kennedy is such a good coach. They'll be good. It's just a matter of how good. Like they're going to be picked probably towards the middle, upper tier of the league, maybe 5, 6, 7 range. And it just feels like there's a lot of teams in that range. I think ECU is in that range. Like if I had to, we've now done all these previews, and I feel like ECU is – I think ECU can conceivably be, and I'm not trying to be a homer here, I feel like ECU can conceivably be the third or fourth best team in this league. Like I think FAU and Memphis are the clear two. I think Memphis, given all the additions, definitely up there. FAU with what they have coming back. Tulane probably going to be picked in the top 3, given what they have coming back. But then after that, I feel like it's pretty open, and I feel like ECU is right in that next range of schools.
I would definitely say that in terms of tiers, it's in my opinion, it's FAU, Memphis, a little bit of a drop off, and then you have Tulane, then a little bit more of a drop off, a tad bit, and then you got, in my opinion, you got Rice, you got North Texas, you got ECU, you got UAB. I think the bulk middle, the median of those around 6 or 7 teams in the middle, they're all neck and neck. They're like right at the fill line. And I'm very, very curious to see where that pans out. And I could see a whole lot of 500 records in conference because of that. And I think that because of those records, some teams will be better than those records, and some teams will be worse than their conference record, just because of how compact the middle of the conference is, instead of it being this conference isn't so much top heavy as it has been in the past, and I'm looking forward to that.
You also have the imbalanced schedule with so many teams in the league. ECU is only going to play Memphis and FAU once, which could hurt their net but help their conference schedule record. So a lot of differing factors. And again, once we get the non-conference, once we get the conference schedule, we'll run over that. Did you look at Charlotte at all? I don't know if you had time to look at their situation before we wrap up here today.
I've looked at them, and I know some people that are over there in Charlotte. I know one person that's connected with the staff, and Dave said that they're just trying to like piece some things together right now. I mean, what happened was really, really crazy how he left to go to Virginia. And I mean, it really threw a wrench in everything. But that program's been interesting the past year, because I mean, they weren't that good last year. They go on to win the CBI, and then you're like, oh wow, like they're on this like high right now. Then they're on the CBI. The football team's on the rise. We're going to the American, and then coach just says peace out. So I mean, they're trying to figure some things out right now, but nothing's set in stone right now. They're definitely behind the 8 ball, especially right now, considering it's August 9th. So I would say beginning of September they'll have everything set, but we'll see.
All right, Kason. Well, this was fun. We made it through another preview. We previewed the entire roster. We previewed the American. We'll take a closer look at Charlotte when we get the conference schedule. No more then, but it's been real, man. I've enjoyed this series. I think our fans have as well. And once we get the non-conference schedule, we'll be back with a full breakdown of what to expect there. We know Florida. We know South Carolina. UNCW is on the schedule. So it looks like it'll be a solid schedule. There are going to be some cupcake games too, it looks like. So we'll see how it all looks when it lines up.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's do it.
He's Kason Rameli. I'm Stephen Igo. This has been our ECU basketball preview podcast. This offseason, we'll be back with you sometime in the near future with another podcast. Again, the Hoist the Colors radio show returns as well to 94.3 The Game next Monday. We'll continue to have podcasts as well in the evening or afternoons too, in conjunction with the radio show. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time. This has been Hoist the Colors.